The maitre d' at Le Jardin Royal crossed his arms and shook his head with practiced disdain as Fallon and Amaya stood in the marble foyer still holding hands after the hostess had already taken their coats. "I'm sorry ladies, but we have a strict policy regarding certain clientele tonight," he said, his voice low enough that only they could hear yet loud enough to sting. 8-year-old Lily tugged at Fallon's sleeve, her small voice cutting through the soft jazz like a blade. "Mommy Fallon, why can't we go in? Why won't they let two moms eat here?" A nearby diner's phone flashed once, then twice, and in that instant the entire evening, the years of carefully guarded secrets, and the billion-dollar contract war they were fighting shifted into something irreversible. Fallon felt Amaya's fingers tighten around hers, a silent warning they had perfected over 7 years of hiding. The restaurant was supposed to be safe, neutral ground far from the boardrooms of New York and Washington, where their two tech empires circled each other like sharks. Fallon ran Apex Dynamics, the AI defense contractor poised to win the Pentagon's next $10 billion surveillance contract. Amaya was executive vice president at rival Vanguard Systems, the firm desperate to steal that same deal. Public knowledge of their relationship would paint them both as compromised liabilities in an industry that still whispered about optics in private equity meetings. Yet here they stood, exposed by a child's innocent question, while the denial hung in the air like smoke. The drive home to their discreet brownstone in Brooklyn was silent, except for Lily's sleepy humming in the back seat. Fallon kept her eyes on the bridge lights, trying to calculate damage control the way she calculated quarterly forecasts. Amaya stared out the window, her jaw set in the same line Fallon had seen during last month's all-night strategy sessions when Vanguard had undercut Apex on a key subcontractor bid. They had promised each other after adopting Lily that the secrecy was temporary, just until the contracts were secured, just until the board votes were locked. But temporary had stretched into years, and tonight's humiliation felt like the first crack in a dam neither of them could afford to let burst. By the time they tucked Lily in and closed the bedroom door, the video was already climbing. Someone had posted it with the caption, "Two moms turned away at NYC's most exclusive spot. Is this 2026 or 1950? Within 40 minutes it had 30,000 views. Fallon's phone buzzed with alerts from her crisis PR team. Amaya's device lit up with messages from Vanguard's general counsel. They stood in the kitchen island, lights low, the city skyline glittering beyond the windows, and for the first time in months the space between them felt charged with something sharper than desire. "We deny everything," Amaya said, first her voice steady, the same tone she used in investor calls. "We say Lily is my niece visiting from out of town, and the whole thing was a misunderstanding." Fallon's laugh came out bitter. "And when the press digs up the adoption papers, when they find the joint mortgage on this house." Amaya turned away, pouring whiskey neither of them really wanted. "Then we lose the contract. Both of us. Vanguard's board will use it to question my judgment, and your Pentagon contacts will quietly drop Apex like it's radioactive." The words landed heavy because they both knew she was right. The industry still rewarded discretion above all else, and two women running competing firms while raising a daughter together would be tabloid gold and investor poison. Fallon set her glass down untouched. "I'm tired of pretending, Amaya. Lily asked a simple question tonight, and I couldn't even give her a simple answer." Amaya's eyes met hers across the marble, the same eyes that had once looked at her across a conference table in San Francisco 7 years ago, when they had both been junior analysts sneaking glances instead of slides. "Love doesn't pay the mortgage, Fallon. Ambition does." The sentence hung between them unfinished because they both understood the choice it implied. One of them would eventually have to pick. The next morning the video had 2 million views. Le Jardin Royal's owner issued a vague apology on Instagram claiming capacity issues, but the internet had already decided. Hashtags trended. Boycotts formed. Fallon watched the numbers while her assistant briefed her on the morning's damage. 3 board members had already emailed asking for clarification. Across town, Amaya sat in Vanguard's glass tower reading the same headlines and feeling the first real tremor of fear, because the exposure wasn't just social media noise. It was the opening their competitors had been waiting for. By noon the story had legs. Business Insider ran a piece titled "Power Couple or Corporate Conflict?" with side-by-side photos of Fallon at a defense summit and Amaya at a tech summit, neither image showing them together, yet the implication clear. Fallon's general counsel advised an immediate statement distancing Apex from any personal matters. Amaya received a terse text from Vanguard CEO. Fix this before the Pentagon Review Board hears about it. They met for lunch at a nondescript cafe in Midtown, the kind of place where deals died quietly. Lily was at school, thank God. You leaked the location, Fallon said the moment Amaya sat down. It wasn't a question. Amaya's face didn't change, but her fingers stilled around her coffee cup. I didn't. But someone on my board knew we were going there. They have friends at Le Jardin. They wanted to rattle us before the final bid presentations next week. Fallon leaned forward, her voice low. And you let it happen because it gives you leverage. If I'm the one forced to come out first, my credibility tanks and Vanguard slides into the contract. Amaya met her gaze without flinching, the same unflinching stare she used when negotiating multimillion-dollar exits. I protected us both. Denial buys time. Coming out now hands them the narrative that we're distracted, compromised. The logic was cold, clean, and exactly what Fallon would have said 6 months ago before Lily started asking why her friends had one mom and she had two. They had met at a tech conference in San Francisco the year Apex and Vanguard were both startups fighting for seed rounds. Fallon had been the brilliant coder with the military contract dreams. Amaya the razor-sharp strategist who could read a term sheet like a novel. One late-night hotel bar conversation had turned into two, then a weekend, then a secret that outlasted both companies' first IPOs. When they adopted Lily from the foster system, they told themselves the secrecy was for her protection. Now Fallon wondered if it had always been for their own. Back at the office, Fallon's team presented updated bid numbers. Vanguard had lowered their price again, undercutting Apex by 8%. The move smelled like inside information. Fallon stared at the spreadsheets, remembering the night Amaya had stayed late at her apartment, just to review projections. Had that been strategy or love? The line had blurred so gradually she could no longer see where one ended and the other began. That afternoon she made her first cold decision. She instructed her head of security to run a quiet trace on every Vanguard executive who had dined at Le Jardin Royale in the past month. If Amaya wanted to play the game, Fallon would match her move for move. Across the river, Amaya sat in her corner office watching the same numbers and feeling the weight of the choice she had already made. Her board had given her an ultimatum that morning: neutralize the relationship narrative or step down. Neutralizing meant distance. Distance meant eventually choosing the company that had given her everything over the woman who had given her the only real home she had ever known. She opened her encrypted messaging app and typed a single line to her contact at the Pentagon Review Board. Additional concerns regarding Apex Dynamics leadership stability. She hit send before she could second-guess. The betrayal tasted metallic, but survival always did. That evening they met at home, pretending for Lily's sake that nothing had changed. Over spaghetti and meatballs, Lily asked again why the restaurant man had been mean. Fallon started to answer, but Amaya cut in smoothly. Sometimes grown-ups have silly rules, sweetheart. It doesn't mean anything. Lily accepted the answer the way children do, but Fallon saw the flicker of doubt in her daughter's eyes and knew the lie had cost them something small but permanent. The Pentagon Review Board moved the final presentations up by 2 weeks, citing market volatility. Both companies scrambled. Fallon worked 18-hour days rewriting her entire pitch to emphasize Apex's uncompromising ethical leadership. Amaya spent equal hours refining Vanguard's counterproposal, highlighting proven stability. Their shared bed became a battlefield of laptops and silence. Lily noticed. She started sleeping with her door open, listening for the hushed arguments that leaked through the walls. One Thursday, Fallon flew to Washington for closed-door meetings. While she was gone, Amaya received a discreet visit from Vanguard's chairman. "The board has reviewed the situation," he said over scotch in a private club. "We need you to go on record denying any romantic involvement." A simple statement. It protects the company and frankly protects her too. Amaya stared at the amber liquid, remembering the night Fallon had proposed with a simple titanium ring in the same brownstone they still shared. "And if I refuse?" The chairman smiled thinly. "Then we accept your resignation effective immediately, and the contract becomes ours by default." The choice was no choice at all. When Fallon returned that night, Amaya was waiting with the statement already drafted on her tablet. "Read it," she said quietly. Fallon scanned the words. "I have never been in a romantic relationship with Fallon Hayes. Our interactions have been strictly professional." The paper felt heavier than any contract she had ever signed. You're asking me to erase us. Amaya's voice cracked for the first time in weeks. I'm asking you to survive. If we both lose our companies, Lily loses everything we built for her. Fallon set the tablet down, walked to the window, and watched the city lights blur. In that moment she understood the depth of the betrayal, not because Amaya had drafted the lie, but because part of her recognized the cold logic as sound. The next morning Fallon made her countermove. She leaked a carefully edited internal memo to a friendly journalist at the Wall Street Journal suggesting Vanguard had used unorthodox competitive intelligence to undercut bids. The article dropped at 9 a.m. and Vanguard's stock dipped 4%. Amaya read it in her office and for the first time felt genuine fear, not of losing the contract but of losing the woman she still loved more than power. That night they didn't speak. They simply lay beside each other in the dark, listening to each other breathe, knowing the war had moved from boardrooms into their home. Lily's school called the following week. A classmate had shown her the viral video and asked if her moms were the bad ladies on the news. Lily came home quiet, and when Fallon tried to comfort her, she pulled away for the first time ever. The small rejection cut deeper than any boardroom loss. That evening Fallon confronted Amaya in the kitchen. We're losing her too. Is the contract really worth this? Amaya's answer was soft but final. The contract is the only thing keeping this roof over her head, and your name on the building. The words were true and therefore unforgivable. The final bit presentations were scheduled for the same day. Jardin Royale's owner filed for bankruptcy. The viral video had triggered a wave of cancellations, celebrity boycotts, and a civil rights lawsuit that drained the restaurant's remaining capital. Fallon watched the news with grim satisfaction even as she prepared her slides. Amaya watched it with hollow eyes, knowing her board's quiet nudge to the maitre d' had started the avalanche. Neither woman spoke the name of the restaurant aloud anymore. It had become their shared ghost. In the Pentagon briefing room, Fallon delivered her presentation with surgical precision, highlighting Apex's proprietary AI ethics protocols and long-term government partnerships. Amaya followed immediately after her slides, crisp, her delivery flawless. The review board asked pointed questions about personal distractions, and both women answered with identical rehearsed calm. Outside in the marble hallway they passed each other without a word, the space between them wider than the entire city. That night the first cracks appeared in their carefully constructed denial. A tabloid published blurry photos from 3 years earlier showing Fallon and Amaya leaving the same hotel in Chicago on the same morning. The headline read, "Secret Romance Confirmed?" Fallon's phone exploded. Amaya's board called an emergency meeting. In the brownstone, Lily asked again why everyone on the internet was talking about her moms. Fallon knelt in front of her daughter, and for the first time told a version of the truth. Some people don't understand that two moms can love each other and still be really good at their jobs. But we do love each other, sweetheart. Always. Lily hugged her tight and Fallon felt the weight of every lie they had told to protect this moment. Amaya came home late, found them asleep on the couch, and stood in the doorway watching. The sight of her family fractured something inside her. She opened her laptop, deleted the draft statement she had prepared for the board, and instead wrote a different letter. A resignation letter. She saved it but didn't send it. Not yet. The next morning Vanguard's chairman summoned her. The board has decided to use the relationship as leverage in the final negotiations. We'll imply that Apex's leadership is unstable unless they withdraw from the bidding. You'll make the call. Amaya stared at the man who had mentored her career and saw only the machinery she had become part of. No, she said quietly. I won't. The chairman's face hardened. Then you're out, Amaya. Effective immediately. She walked out of the building carrying nothing but her phone and the resignation letter she had never sent. Fallon received the news while in a strategy session. Her first reaction was triumph. Her second was terror. Without Amaya at Vanguard, the playing field had changed, but so had the woman she loved. She drove home early, found Amaya packing a suitcase in the guest room. Where are you going? Amaya zipped the bag with steady hands. Somewhere the spotlight can't reach me. You win the contract, Fallon. You always played the game better anyway. The words were final, and Fallon realized too late that the real betrayal had never been the restaurant or the leaked memos. It had been the slow erosion of trust that turned love into a liability. Lily's birthday fell on the same week the Pentagon announced its decision. Apex won the contract. Vanguard filed for restructuring. The brownstone filled with congratulatory flowers and champagne bottles. Fallon didn't have the heart to open. Amaya had moved to a small apartment in Queens, refusing Fallon's offers of financial help. They communicated only through lawyers about custody arrangements and asset division. The secrecy they had fought so hard to protect had finally destroyed the very thing it was meant to save. Fallon threw Lily a quiet party with just close friends, no press. When the cake arrived, Lily blew out the candles and made her wish out loud. "I wish my two moms could be happy again." The room went silent. Fallon excused herself to the kitchen and cried for the first time since the restaurant night. Across the city, Amaya sat alone in her new apartment watching the same video of Lily's wish that a friend had forwarded. She opened the resignation letter she had carried for weeks and finally hit send on an email to Fallon. "I was wrong. Power was never the prize. You and Lily were. I'm sorry I chose wrong." The email arrived while Fallon was tucking Lily in. She read it 3 times, then sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall where family photos still hung. The next morning she drove to Queens without calling first. Amaya opened the door looking smaller somehow without the power suits and corner office armor. They stood in the narrow hallway, neither speaking, until Lily's voice came from the car. "Mommy, Amaya, are you coming home now?" The question held no anger, only hope, and it broke both women at once. They didn't rush back into anything. Therapy sessions, awkward conversations, and long walks in Prospect Park slowly rebuilt what ambition had torn down. Fallon stepped down as CEO, choosing instead to consult on ethics policy for smaller firms. Amaya started her own boutique advisory company focused on women-led startups. The spotlight faded as newer scandals took its place, and gradually the world moved on. Yet the damage lingered in small ways. Lily still asked sometimes why people had been mean. Fallon still flinched at certain restaurant names. Amaya still checked her phone for bored alerts that no longer came. Love had survived, but it had been reshaped by the choices they had made, and the ones they had refused to make. A year later they stood together at the dedication of a new STEM scholarship program named after Lily. The event was small, intentional, and public. No more hiding. Fallon spoke first, her voice steady as she thanked the sponsors, and then turned to Amaya. "Some people believe ambition and love cannot coexist. We proved them wrong by choosing both, even when it almost cost us everything." Amaya took the microphone next, her eyes finding Fallon's across the stage. "And sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to let go of the wrong kind of strength." Later that evening, back in the brownstone, Lily asleep upstairs, they sat on the roof deck watching the city lights. Fallon reached for Amaya's hand, the same hand she had held the night everything changed. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly. Amaya was quiet for a long moment, then smiled, the first real smile in months. "Every scar, yes. Because we're still here." The city hummed below them, indifferent to their story, yet somehow smaller now that they had stopped running from it. In the end, when love demands everything and power promises the world, was Amaya right to choose survival over honesty? Or did Fallon prove that true strength lies in risking it all for both?